Before diving into this incredible story, consider subscribing to the channel and hitting the bell. Every story here has something to say, and you won't want to miss a single one. The sun was slowly setting on Atlanta's dusty neighborhoods, stretching its last golden rays like tentative fingers across the broken windows, cracked walls, and rusty roofs. A dusk light tinged the sidewalks with a warm, almost unreal melancholy, as if the city itself were sighing at the end of a day that had been too long. Among the shadows, walked a lone man. Jeremiah Brooks, 46, his jacket too big for his emaciated frame, his shoes crunching on the asphalt with every step, walked slowly, his head tilted, his gaze vacant. His once well-cut face now bore the visible traces of sleepless nights and a frozen sadness. His hands, which once signed multi-million-dollar contracts, sometimes trembled slightly, not from the cold, but from an inner emptiness. He hadn't always been like this. Just 2 years ago, he was an accomplished man, the owner of several buildings in the southeast of the country, known for his integrity in an often unscrupulous business world. His once genuine smile lit up charity dinners, his words were listened to, and his future seemed mapped out. But everything had fallen apart in less than a year. His wife, Maria, his childhood sweetheart, had been diagnosed with terminal cancer. 6 months. Just 6 months. He had stopped everything to be with her, spending every last dollar to try to give her the slightest reprieve. She had left in his arms one October morning, whispering to him, "Be strong, my king. Love again, even if the world does not deserve it." And as if the pain weren't enough, it was at that precise moment that his longtime associate, a friend of 20 years, had taken advantage of his absence to betray him. By manipulating documents, emptying accounts, and leaving him to shoulder the debts, he had ruined Jeremiah. House seized. Assets liquidated. Accounts frozen. Reputation tarnished. There was nothing left. Nothing, except a rusty, rickety 1993 Chevrolet Impala, in which he now slept in deserted supermarket parking lots or behind community centers. But despite this, Jeremiah didn't beg. His pride, or perhaps his quiet dignity, held him back. He accepted little but gave much. Every day, he went to the Summerhill Neighborhood Support Center. He served meals, repaired doors, listened to the stories of those who, like him, had slowly slipped out of the normal world. He never talked about himself, but always offered a word of comfort, a hand on the shoulder, a sincere look. He no longer sought wealth. Nor even happiness. Just a little peace. A calm breath in a screaming world. It was an evening like any other. Jeremiah stood in the back room of a former diner converted into a temporary shelter. The walls, covered in torn posters and faded graffiti, held the lingering smell of stale grease and forgotten memories. A rusty stove struggled to warm the room, and chipped cups passed through the rough hands of those who had also lost everything. That evening, around the rickety table lit by a bare bulb hanging from the ceiling, several men were talking in low voices. Former accountants, injured workers, a former teacher, Ann Raymond, a man once feared in the Atlanta courts, a once brilliant lawyer, now lost in the shadows of alcohol and shame. Raymond stared at his black coffee in silence, before exhaling slowly, almost like a secret he didn't really want to reveal. "There's something happening in the wealthy suburbs." Everyone turned to him. A network. Clandestine. A kind of private auction. Not for art or cars. No. For girls. Young girls. Sometimes adults, sometimes barely. Their own parents sell them. To pay off debts, to survive, or just to get rid of a burden. An icy silence fell over the room. Jeremiah stared at him. "You're kidding. Tell me you're kidding." Raymond shook his head wearily. "I've seen them, Jeremiah. Not with my own eyes, no. But I've worked some strange cases. Disappearances that went nowhere. Kids wiped from systems. And now I'm getting whispers. Place names. Times. Sales that are held under the guise of benefit galas. With champagne, smiles, and human bidding behind velvet curtains. Jeremiah felt a chill run down his spine. Part of him wanted to dismiss it all as a sordid rumor, the delusions of broken men who had seen too much, drunk too much, suffered too much. But something deep down knew it was possible. Too possible. He had seen what wealth could do to people who no longer had a soul. In the days that followed, the rumor mill only grew. Fragments of information were slipped here and there. A woman at the community center spoke of a sale where her niece had disappeared. A former bouncer turned maintenance man recounted hearing of young beauties being sold like exotic pearls at a mansion in the Vinings Hills. A date came up several times. A place also, Oak Haven Estate, a luxurious property on the outskirts of town, rarely used except for very exclusive events. A gala was planned there, ostensibly to support disadvantaged youth. The irony struck him right in the heart. Jeremiah spent several sleepless nights staring up at the filthy ceiling of his car. Thoughts assailed him. He thought of his late daughter, taken in infancy by a miscarriage that Maria had never gotten over. He thought of his wife, what she would have said if she had heard these stories. You can't fix everything, Jeremiah, but if you still have the strength to reach out, reach out. So he made a decision. He went to a pawnbroker. He took a small midnight blue velvet box out of his pocket. Inside, Maria's pocket watch, engagement gift engraved on the back, "To my king, forever, Mr." Then he went back to his rusty locker in the community center and left a brown wool suit, worn but perfectly tailored, a remnant of its glory days. He sold both. Without a word. He hadn't even asked how much he would get for them. He knew that was all he had left. With the few crumpled bills between his fingers, he rented a cheap tuxedo, shaved, fixed his hair, and took a long look at himself in a cracked mirror. He was no longer the businessman, nor the lost widower. He was a man ready in the darkness, to rekindle a light there. The mansion overlooked the wooded hills of Vinings like a white marble throne set upon a carpet of trees. It was an almost mythical property, one that few had ever seen from the inside. The manor of Oak Haven Estate, belonging to an old family whose name only appeared in registers closed to public view. Jeremiah stepped out of his rental car, uncomfortable in his oversized tuxedo and polished but worn shoes. The illuminated facade of the mansion cast a golden glow over the manicured lawns, and white-gloved waiters greeted guests with tentatively bubbly glasses of champagne. Everything seemed perfectly orchestrated, on the surface. As soon as he stepped through the heavy, carved doors, he was drawn into the heavy, almost suffocating atmosphere. The lobby was adorned with crystal chandeliers and black marble columns, and antique paintings stared at the guests with fixed, almost accusing gazes. The guests, mostly white men, wore gold watches, had calculating looks, and smiles that never reached their eyes. But this wasn't just a charity gala. There was a second invisible floor, a layer of shadow behind the gilding. He was guided wordlessly to a secondary, more intimate room. There, the decor changed, dim lighting, velvet armchairs, heavy curtains. An improvised, raised stage sat at the back of the room, framed by dark drapes. In front of it, about 20 men sat, notebooks on their knees, cups in hand, whispering among themselves as if at a rare art auction, except that the objects were about to enter the flesh. The first girl was brought in. About 16 years old. Too much makeup. A dead stare in a frozen body. An awkward silence followed, then numbers flew around the room, 8,000. 10. 12. She was awarded the prize without emotion. She was taken away immediately. Then another. And another. Each time, Jeremiah felt a growing anger burn in his gut. He wanted to stand up. Scream. Stop everything. But he knew he didn't have the strength, the evidence, or the allies. Not yet. And then, she came in. She didn't walk like the others. She was moving slowly, straight despite everything, like a condemned woman refusing to crawl. Alina. Fair skin, golden complexion, dark hair tied back in a tight bun. An ivory dress covered her body, finely sculpted by youth, but her gaze, Her gaze said it all. Extinct. Exhausted. But dignified. She scanned the room, and Jeremiah was struck by the absence of fear in her pupils. No submission. No pleading. A weariness, yes. A silent rage too. But no shame. She refused to break. Even here. In a corner of the room, her parents were there. Her mother, rigid in a black dress, watched the scene with icy indifference. Her father, a dry man with a closed face, crossed his arms. They didn't see their daughter. They saw one amount to be collected, a debt to erase. A life they had already erased. The presenter, a man with a thick smile and a blank stare, cleared his throat. Number 17. Alina. 19 years old. Virgo. Educated. Speaks English, French, and some Italian. Very beautiful, as you can see. A rare gem. Starting bid, $10,000. An awkward silence followed. Alina didn't lower her eyes. She stared defiantly at the room. As if silently calling out, "Go ahead. Look at me. But you'll never get me." Jeremiah felt his heart contract. She wasn't a girl. She was a spark. A soul standing in hell. He raised his hand, slowly, almost without believing it himself. 5,000. There were peals of laughter. Does the tramp want to play? He thought it was a garage sale. That old black man has lost his mind. But no one is outbidding. Jeremiah didn't have the codes. He didn't have the looks. He didn't have the money. But he saw what others didn't, light in the shadow. The men in the room knew Alina was different. Too proud. Too free. She would resist them. She wouldn't bend, wouldn't beg. And they didn't like that. She was too alive. The presenter shrugged in disgust. Sold for 5,000. Number 17 comes out. Jeremiah felt his breath catch. Alina looked at him. For a second. Just one tiny second. She didn't smile. She didn't cry. But she blinked slowly, like Aslan, thank you, without words, without promise. He hadn't bought a girl. He had bought a freedom. Alina refused to speak to him at first. She stood there, frozen, arms crossed, as if any words could become a weakness, a breach in her wall of survival. When they left Vinings's house that evening, she climbed into the car without a word, her eyes fixed on the road, her fists clenched in her lap. Jeremiah, driving, respected this silence. He didn't try to reassure her or console her. He knew that what she had experienced couldn't be pieced together with canned phrases. He didn't take her home, for he didn't really have a home. But he took her to Asmal, discreet home run by women, a place he knew well, having directed work there in exchange for a temporary bed. There, in a clean room with bare but safe walls, a single bed, a fresh sheet, a sink, and a window without bars, she finally put down her things, a small bag she had been holding against her from the beginning. He handed her a blanket and a tray with rice, some hot vegetables, and lemon tea. She didn't look at him. He sat down on a bench in the hallway and simply said to her through the half-open door. You don't owe me anything. You can leave whenever you want. I'm not your master. I just want you to survive. That's all. For several days, she kept her distance. She ate alone. She didn't answer his questions. She didn't thank him. But she watched. Discreetly. Silently. She saw this man who came to the center every morning to repair faucets, distribute clothes, console battered women, or fix a rusty cart. A man who was always polite, always modest. He never expected anything in return. Every evening, she watched him withdraw to a corner of the hearth. He would take an old, dog-eared photograph out of his pocket, one of a woman with a sweet smile. He would place it in front of him and whisper a few words in a low voice, like a prayer or a diary shared with an absent soul. Today I repaired the north wing door. There was a little girl with bruises on her arm. I gave her a candy. She smiled at me, Maria. You should have seen her smile. Then he put the photo away, still slowly, as if every gesture counted. And one evening, as they passed each other in the corridor, Alina stopped. Her eyes lowered, but her voice clear. Why me? It wasn't an accusation. It was a naked question. Tired. Maybe even a little curious. Jeremiah froze. He seemed to search for words, then looked up at her. He looked old at that moment. Not physically, but in his memories. Because, he said, inhaling, his voice breaking. If someone had done this for my daughter, I could have died in peace. Alina stared at him unblinkingly. She hadn't known that Jeremiah and Maria had lost a daughter, long before she was born. A little girl named Anaya, gone before she even lived. But in Jeremiah's eyes that night, she felt what no one had ever offered him, protection without expectation. Tenderness without conditions. It wasn't love. It wasn't pity. It was something even rarer, dignity given to someone the world had judged unworthy. And it was there, that evening, in that silent home, that a first invisible thread was woven between them. Not a blood relationship. Not a contract. Bhuta's silent pact between two wounded souls. One wanted to be reborn. The other wanted to give meaning to her survival. 2 years passed. 2 years that passed neither quickly nor slowly, but with the precise slowness of reconstruction. As one rebuilds a cathedral with ashes and faith. Alina had changed, her face remained grave, marked by what she had been through, but her gait had gained confidence. She no longer avoided glances. She no longer whispered. She had returned to her studies with determination, enrolling in a social work program at Georgia State University. She arrived as a quiet unknown, but her exemplary grades and quiet commitment quickly attracted attention. When the class discussed issues of human trafficking or the vulnerability of minors, she listened earnestly. She knew. Not in theory. In truth. And when she was once asked why she wanted to become a social worker, she simply replied. Because no one heard me. And now I want to hear the ones we never listened to. But behind this fight, she was carrying out another mission. Silently. One evening, sitting on her bed, she posted a video online. The camera showed a simple static shot. Her voice was calm, almost cold. She told the story of a 19-year-old girl, auctioned off by her own parents. She gave no names, no faces. Except one, that of a broken man, a formerly wealthy man who had become invisible, who had raised his hand not to possess, but to save. She concludes the video with these words. This man reached out to me when everyone else had rejected me. He's neither rich nor famous. He's lost everything except his dignity. I want him to have a second chance. Not for himself. For everyone else. The video became viral within weeks, it had reached 1 million views. Media outlets picked up the story. Touched celebrities shared the link to a fundraising campaign. Donations poured in. Tens, then hundreds of thousands of dollars. Jeremiah, at first, knew nothing about it. When he learned the truth, he refused. He said, "This money belongs to you. You raised it alone." But she answered, "I don't want it to serve me. I want it to serve others. To those who, like me, have no one." And thus was born Star House. A large, carefully renovated building in a modest Atlanta neighborhood. Painted white, surrounded by a flower garden that Jeremiah tended every morning. Inside, there were individual bedrooms, an art studio, a legal office, and a communal kitchen always filled with reassuring aromas. At the entrance, screwed onto the stone, a golden plaque. Star House, so that no girl is ever treated like an object. Every week, girls arrived. Hurt. On the run. Broken. But under this roof, they found a glimmer of light. A listening ear. Protection. A space where no one looked at them as merchandise. Alina ruled the space with firm gentleness. Jeremiah, on the other hand, had become a tutelary, almost mythical figure. He was called Pops in the hallways. He listened. He fixed furniture. He cooked. But most of all, he was there. And one summer evening, on the roof of the center, they both dined. The city below shone like a carpet of inverted stars. Jeremiah, a simple plate on his lap, watched the sky turn purple. Alina, sitting beside him, played absently with a spoon. The warm wind carried the scent of jasmine from the garden. Then, without looking at him, she whispered, "You saved me." Jeremiah slowly turned his head toward her. He smiled at her, one of those tired, deep smiles that only men who have truly suffered can give. Then, staring at the horizon, "No. You're the one who brought me back to life." A long silence followed. No words were necessary. For in this moment suspended between the noise of the city and the calm of the roof, in this peace shared by two beings once broken, there was no more executioner, no more victim, no more debt, no more fear. Just two repaired souls, bound not by blood, nor by pity, but by something rarer and truer. An unconditional love, born from the ashes, stronger than pain, stronger than abandonment, stronger than death.